Hey everyone, another podcast in for mindfulness and positivity group on how we can achieve mindfulness and positivity. It is not a gift, it's a process and we need to try our hardest at it. Today we had the amazing Melissa on from Arizona. Loved her accent. She has a website called workingoncalm.com and she does a blog because she suffered from anxiety and she wants to give some people their techniques. What a lovely chat this is. We talk about her being a stay-at-home mum with a PhD, huge amounts of business experience, and her last child was born 4 months premature. What an amazing chat we have. I'm so blessed that I got to meet Melissa. She was absolutely lovely. It was great to talk about different ways to deal with anxiety. Here it is. Have an amazing week, everybody. Love you all.
Hello, everybody in the sunshine. Well, it is in the UK. I don't know about the rest of the world, but I can see a little bit of sun damage on my face. Should use more suntan lotion. So we have an exciting thing as we keep going with how we achieve mindfulness and positivity. Today we have Melissa, who's going to tell us about living with anxiety. Probably a bit anxious about this live. How are you doing?
I'm good. You're right. I'm a little nervous, but yeah, I'm here to talk about being anxious like a lot of other people.
Lots of people. It's an anxious. Sorry, I'll just sort my camera out. I've been a little bit unorganised today. So go on, Melissa. Tell us where you're from and whatnot. Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Yeah, I live in the United States. I'm in Arizona, and I am a stay-at-home mom with 3 very young boys. And before that, though, I worked in business consulting and I did training for Dale Carnegie and also taught. Yeah,
Dale
Dale
Carnegie.
Carnegie.
This is literally the Bible. Like I call it the Hoyle Bible because it was one of the first books. I'm on about how to win friends and influence people. It was one of the first books that I ever read that started to change the way that my mind thinks.
That's interesting. It's a wonderful book. It's been around a long time. It's tried and true. A lot of people love it. The training was awesome to do, just really inspirational to get to work with people. And so that was part of what I did. And then I also taught university students, graduate students, and that sort of thing in psychology and management.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to that because that book's really important to me. So I read it and it helped me evolve. I think it was very first thing that might start to change the way I think, but it was more so than that. I've got three kids. I don't know what happened then. And my oldest son, who's 21, he was on this podcast a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
14 years old, I paid for him to read the book.
Uh-huh.
So he read it at 16, he reread it himself. At 17, he reread it again. I think he read it 4 times in total.
That's awesome.
Awesome. And I've got another thing. I'm in a building right now. And about 13 years ago, one of my businesses was small and this building came up and I met the landlord and he came round and it was a big opportunity for me, big move. And this guy helped me out a lot. I'd seen him for 2 times. I'd seen him and then I'd just read that book at the time. So I contacted him. I said, Robert, go ask this question. Have you ever read the book How to Win Friends and Influence? And he went, why'd you ask that? I went, no reason. He went, well, that's interesting you should say that in Christian because in 1987 I did the course and I came top and won it for the whole of the UK. And it was like, wow, I could read that in him. That was mad.
Yeah, it's a great book. I like that you can pick it up also. I mean, because it's broken down by the principles, you can really pick it up and read it for a few minutes. You don't have to read the entire thing or take too large of a chunk of time. And there's always something good in there, really about just being a good human. But yeah, a lot of them are lessons that our moms or grandmas probably taught us. But it's nice to have a refresher. And then also part of the training is that we brought it back to the business world. So how could you use this at work? How could you be more confident speaking to other people or getting your message across, but also listening to other people and just getting along in general?
One of mine is, and especially with the coaching, I'm not coming across as loud. I mean, loads. I bought the best microphone you could get. and it's a bit like, you know, like, if this is a modern problem. Yeah, I bought the best one, but I don't know how to use it. So I've had it where no one could hear me, and I thought it's the Joe Rogan mic. I thought if I'm doing this podcast, I'm doing it. So I
You're gonna do it right.
Yeah. It's been like I took it home to do one, and I was so quiet, and then so apologies if I'm coming across as too loud.
No, I hear you just fine.
Do you know one of the most important things to do with coaching now? Out of the book, one of the most important things I learned was how to put yourself in other people's shoes. So wherever you go, meeting, seeing someone, whatever it is, think about what they're thinking about. Like in a business deal, always think deals have to match. And if you've got a deal that's like that, sorry, I don't know, it's not like that, it's never going to work. And I used to deals like that, either way, me on that. And then I've realized they only work when they're there like that, matching.
Yeah. And that was one of the sessions I remember was how to disagree agreeably, and sort of similar concepts of thinking of how other people might be coming across or what their needs might be, and how can you create win-win solutions and that sort of thing. So definitely good stuff in there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
For me, it's like it was a big turning point in my life, and I've tried to get my my middle son. He's 14, so he's starting on that next sort of stage, and he won't read it. And I bought him the new one. They've got the new revamped one now, haven't they? It's a modern day age, which I like.
Yeah.
Can't get him there yet. I will, but just not yet. The wheels haven't started turning just yet. You've got all this to come. I had a look at a picture. Yours are about, I'd say 8 is the oldest, is it?
Oh, he's 9. Yep. Good.
Oh, he's 9.
Yes. And so I was just thinking, I imagine at 14, it's hard to take advice from your dad or your mom, because I know at 9, it's already starting.
Oh, the joys.
Yeah. Maybe if the advice comes from your son, your oldest son, maybe that would help.
Well, that's an interesting one, because my oldest son, I was a bit I was harder because I was inexperienced, first-time parent, and I was a bit out of control in my teenage years, and I didn't want that to happen, so I was really hard on him. But that worked with him, and that's great. We get on unbelievably well. But Lucas sees a much better version of me. I don't shout anymore. I'm just not the guy I was 7 years ago. Sort of. Yeah. My
it's
advice.
Funny how each one's different.
Each one is definitely different. Yeah. Well, I've got a girl on that. I've got 2 boys. I thought, I know how to do this parenting. It's really easy. And then I got Ava, and I'm like, just no idea. Just like. But you're a girl with 3 boys, so it's like understanding the other.
I wouldn't know what to do if my third was a girl, honestly. So.
I would have thought you'd know more. You'd know more then. Well,
once you've already had 2, I think 3 just kind of it makes it easier to have. People will often say, "Do you wish you had a girl?" And I'm happy with having boys. And honestly, I think it was easier by the time we got to the third to have a boy and kind of feel like I knew what to expect a little bit at least. Although he definitely,
Did you want a girl? That was the idea. We've had 2. We're going to try and get a girl, or was it?
No, not really. I mean, honestly, we were surprised by the third one, so we were just happy. And then it was actually a really rough pregnancy. He was born 4 months early. And then he spent 6 months in the NICU before coming home, and he came home on oxygen and had to have surgery. And so it was an insane. I was just happy he was alive. And now he's he's starting kindergarten in a week or 2. He's doing great. He's a healthy 6-year-old, but it was a real rough few first years.
I've got a friend that's there, but what an amazing part of modern medicine that someone can be born 4 months
it's amazing.
And still be a totally fit and healthy human being. I think it's like, wow, phenomenal.
It really is. And when you spend any amount of time in the NICU, you realize you're very grateful for modern medicine, the doctors, and especially all the nurses who, essentially for 6 months, nurses raised my baby, because I couldn't be there all the time. I had a 3 and a 1-year-old at home as well. So it was rough.
What was that like for you?
It was a very difficult experience. And I think a lot of it probably wasn't even, I don't even think I felt a lot of it at the time. In order to survive, you kind of have to remove yourself from the situation mentally for a while. And so it wasn't until my husband and I used to joke, as our youngest Victor is doing better, we're getting worse, like mentally, what's happening. And I think it was the digesting of the trauma, because it really was a trauma.
So I'm interested, like, so for that 4 months, was there any joy in your life? Was it hard?
Well, it was actually 6 months. It was 189 days.
Wow.
Yes, there was joy because we had, it wasn't just always a struggle. There was a lot to be grateful for. There was a lot of days where he was steady or improving. And then there would be some days where he took a turn and, we sort of were brought to our knees. But there was a lot to be grateful for in the time. And, we had 2 other children at home. So we had to still experience life and still at least try to be present for them.
Wow, what a tough. It's a bit like, though, it's an example for people to listen to, that was then, and everything passes and we move on, and it's temporary. And temporary was 6 months, that's not that temporary, but I imagine the strength, as they got a little bit bigger, strength of the human being was coming through, and I imagine it got better. What were the other kids like about it?
They didn't really know. My middle child, he hadn't even turned 2 by the time his younger brother was born. So he didn't know any different. He didn't know what was going on. And then my oldest son was old enough to kind of comprehend that he had a brother and that his brother was in the NICU. And a few times we brought him with us to meet him. And it was, the funny that the first time he came, he asked if he could pet his brother. He's just like, sort of like reaching in a cage almost, it felt like, because it was, the incubator. And so they adjusted. Kids are really resilient, and probably more so than adults. And so they probably did a lot better with it than I did. And you're right about things passing. I actually later, sort of to remember the journey, tattooed on my wrist, "This too shall pass." And that's something I try and remember, because no matter how difficult a moment is, or an hour or a day or a month is, it will get better. Things will change.
I think at the time it's hard with the mind doing what it does and playing its little tricks and flashing on and having the emotions and all the power that goes on it. But it will. I think everyone that I meet in a crisis doesn't realise that they've probably been in 500 crises throughout their life, and they've made it out of 499 and they've just got another one to go. And the mad thing is, I don't want to tell them this at the time, but there's more to come.
It's very true. I remember when I had my first son, and it wasn't a crisis, but I remember just being tired and talking to my boss at the time. I was still doing business consulting then, and saying, "Oh, I just can't wait for things to get easier." I think at the time my oldest wasn't sleeping through the night, and my boss, who had much grown children, said, "Well, it doesn't really get easier, it just gets different." I'm like, that's true. I'm realizing that's very true.
Well, I'm at that stage now. I have got, because I'm now a 5 kids, because my partner has 2 kids and they live with me. But then one's gone, so I'm 4 really. But one of them, Sophia, she's 7. So I've got a 21, 14, and 12 who are on different cycles now, and Harry's nearly 12, and Sophia's our young one. And I go out now and I see, it's like I did it all young, and it's just mad. I was there before doing some filming. I was filming for a video. There was loads of these little kids, and it's like you do sort of forget a bit. It's like it must be a human nature thing, because it was quite hard, quite a bit of the time. If I think hard enough, I think back to the hard times, and maybe I blank them out because I just see the good stuff.
That's great. That's nice if you can do that. I think some of us have to work a little bit harder at that.
So you're going to talk to us today about living with anxiety. Is it something that you've suffered with, or is it? Tell me about your experience.
Yeah. So when I was 19 or 20 in college was the first time I was sitting in a lecture hall, and all of a sudden, for no reason, my heart started racing, and my brain was saying, run, get out of here. And I had no idea what was going on. And it took me a while, but eventually saw a counselor and was diagnosed with the anxiety. And so and she was great at teaching me what's known as the cognitive behavioral techniques. So those are the ones that help you to question your thought pattern and then replace them with more rational, logical thoughts, or ways to soothe yourself. And so I did that for a long time, and coped, and have had ups and downs with the anxiety, but essentially have lived with it ever since then. So it's been a couple decades that I've had it. And so most of the time I've done just fine, been able to have moments where, I'll feel my heart racing, or I'll feel like sort of that panicky feeling.
You always get it with a heart rate. You get anything else?
I do. I'll get like a tightness of my chest. I'll sort of like can I breathe? Am I breathing? Like you sort of like taking my pulse or monitoring my body in that way.
I didn't know it at the time, but I used to get this tight chest where I ended up going to the hospital quite a few times. About when they think tight chest, you're in hospital, they think one thing. And they never, do you know what was quite mad? They never once said it was that. And I was going to doctors all the time. So this is 25 years ago it was. And in the event I was at the doctor's, and I didn't realise that was anxiety. I just didn't realise that that's what that was.
Yeah.
So how could it produce a pain? It's like that.
It's interesting how that happens, how you can feel anxiety or really any emotion in your body, but not realize that's what it is. And I think a lot of times here, at least in the States, at least now, if a lot of people end up in the hospital with a racing heart or a tight chest, I think that's one of the first things people think is, you're maybe having a panic attack or anxiety. But mine was thankfully not to where I was ending up in the hospital. I was just uncomfortable. And so, and like I said, it sort of ebbs and flows. And is that how it is for you? Sometimes it's worse and sometimes it's better.
You know what? It's funny because I had it then a lot, but then I was partying a lot. So I'd get it at the beginning, I'm talking, staying up, taking ridiculous amounts of drugs and all kinds of crazy stuff. I was up to things that were creating anxiety in you. You were basically, like, it's funny now, I see people, and now I'm older, I manage myself to the max. But so, for instance, I like a couple of beers, but I don't want to drink too much because when you mess with your mojo, keep up and down. I like how we're doing, staying as we are. I don't mind a bit of adrenaline when I'm doing something, but I don't do anything now to create it. But if I have anything bad happen in my life, it comes back again. And what I remember the most, when I was about, I used to just permanently be sat. It felt better when I had my hand there like that. And I'd always do it. But I didn't know it was anything to do with stress or anything. And I went to numerous doctors, but one of them once said, when do you get it? It took about 10 times for saying, when do you get it? I don't know when I get it. And he said, do you get it now? Do you get it? And I went, I don't know. And he gave me propanol, which is it propanol? It slows your heart down a little bit. So it's,
okay.
Can't remember the call. But that worked for me. And then it stopped for ages. And then a few years ago, I had proper life events that went on and it came back a little bit. And that's when now I know if that happens, you need to sort yourself out. Something's going on, you need to evaluate what it is.
It's great when you can learn that, and I'm getting better at that sort of, my chest is tight. It doesn't mean that I can't breathe. It might be that I'm just feeling anxious right now. So it's being able to sort of be curious about what's going on in your body and what signals you're getting. But so I've had ups and downs, kind of sounds like you have too, at different times when you're more stressed or maybe not sleeping or maybe like drinking too much or whatever. Those are pretty common exacerbants. And so I was doing pretty good, and then the pandemic hit, and like a lot of people, like what we're seeing with the data is a lot of people with stress, depression, anxiety are at all-time highs. And so my anxiety was just through the roof at the end of last year. And my kids were getting ready to go back to school. We had been, in quarantine for quite a long time. My husband is in medicine and had been working in the hospital. And it was just a really stressful time. And I actually ended up having I actually ended up being hospitalized and diagnosed with a condition called POTS, which causes your heart rate to elevate.
No.
And so imagine being an anxious person and having a condition that causes your heart to race. And so it just set me over the edge in
And is that
terms of
separate-
my anxiety.
Not anxiety related, it's something internal kind of.
It's not. So it stands for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which is a big mouthful, but essentially your heart rate increases based on a change in position of your body. So if I were sitting on the couch, I'd be okay. If I got up to like do the dishes, my heart rate would feel like I was running a marathon.
Wow.
And I didn't know what was going on. Luckily, I was diagnosed pretty quickly from the onset. Some people struggle with it for a long time and are just told they're anxious. But there was a real interplay with my anxiety, because my anxiety would make my heart race too. And so it was hard for me to tell what is going on. And then, if you're already someone who hates when your heart races, imagine, happening for no reason. So it really just put me over the edge. And so with the physical stuff going on and just the stress, everything, I decided I've got to, at that time, my doctor's like, maybe we should consider medicine, which I'm not against at all. I've used it in the past for anxiety, but I thought I want to do the things first that I know I should be doing to manage my anxiety. And there are things that that would make me feel better naturally. And so that's when I committed to really working on all of mindfulness and doing things that would make me feel calm. And that's when I started the blog that in the very beginning of the new year. And I thought if I could make a commitment to do something to care for myself every day, which is hard for parents of young kids, I would at least be giving it a shot, knowing that I'm trying to manage my stress and anxiety on my own before I decide what other options I have. And so I made a commitment and to do a few things that would bring down my level of stress, that would prioritize my own self-care, and things that are all evidence-based I knew should.
Can we have them? Someone might want these. What were you doing? What were you?
Yeah. So and I put it on the website if anyone wants to check it out.
What's the website?
It's workingoncalm.com. And I have a blog, and then if you look at the commit to calm tab, you can download the PDF for free, and or you can at least see the steps I took and make your own commitment. But I decided there were 4 things that I would do. One of them was thinking about how I move. And I love to work out. I've always been a fan of exercise, but I knew I needed something that was like a more mindful approach to my body. And so I wanted to do yoga or stretching. Like I was trying to set the bar low, not be like, oh, I'm going to do yoga every day, but I'm going to do something related to yoga or stretching. I wanted to do either meditation or just connect with my breath in some way. So it doesn't have to be, we're taking on this huge project. It's like just closing my eyes and breathing for a few minutes. The third thing was gratitude. I wanted to make sure I was finding some way to practice gratitude, which has been, shown to boost our mood. And then the last one was finding pleasure in everyday life, because I just felt like I wasn't being present. There's so many blessings I have. I've got 3 young kids, but it's so easy to get overwhelmed with 3 young kids. And then feel like, geez, I'm missing this all. Like I'm stuck in my head. I'm frazzled and stressed, and I'm missing the best moments of my life.
Yeah. How many people are doing that?
I think it's a common thing. And that's why I wanted to start the blog. I thought, I'm not the only one in this position. I think this is a really common challenge for a lot of people. And I'm going to just make this commitment, make it public so that I can at least stick with it, and then write about the journey. And so for I committed to 30 days. So starting small, and it was 10 minutes a day.
When was the 30 days?
This was, it was January 1st. So the typical like New Year's resolution thing, which I don't usually do in the past, but I thought it was sort of this good, we're getting rid of 2020, going into 2021, like let's start on a good positive note. And for those who feel overwhelmed by starting something like this, I want to encourage people to just do a few minutes. And that's why I said I would do it for 30 days, but just 10 minutes a day. It wasn't all 4 of those activities. It was 1. So if I could find one thing to do for 10 minutes in the day to feel better, and then as you start doing that, you just feel better, and then you want to do it, or you start to build the habit and you want to do it longer, or you find maybe like one of those things doesn't work that well for you, and so you focus on the other three, which is perfectly fine too. So anyway, I started doing that and writing about it because I didn't see I've seen a number of blogs, but I didn't see a lot that were talking. I was looking for someone who was sort of in the struggle, because that's where I felt. I have a PhD in psychology.
Because every time I speak, I can hear it coming back. That might be the playback. Am I on a speaker, or is it just coming back on? Sometimes when I go in the mic, I can hear myself like going.
There's no echo or anything for me. You sound good to me.
Right. Okay. Go on. Sorry about that.
Okay. No, that's okay. So I have a PhD in psychology. I have some background. Yeah, I have some background in this.
Wow.
But a lot of my education and training was in the workplace. So mine was in organizational behavior. So it was psychology applied to work. And this is a little bit of a different arena. And I felt like a lot of the experts that you look to on advice like this have been doing this for decades, it feels like, or they're experts at it, or they've been researching it forever. And I wanted to do something different in that I'm in the trenches doing the work with other people. Like I'm in the struggle with you and I'm writing about it. And I wanted to share my journey, but also create a community so other people could share ideas, or because I don't know all there is to know about this. I'm really just getting started myself. And so that was the whole impetus behind the blog. And
have you kept it up every day? So you started on the first. Did you keep going, or?
Almost every day I do something. So I keep a little log that I'll update for myself just to kind of keep myself on track and remind myself. And some days I don't get any of it, done. But most days I do something, whether it's a formal meditation or just practicing some breathing techniques. I'll do yoga a few times a week. But I don't.
Stretch it. If you hit the 40s, you're just stiff. So I did the yoga, but I thought I wanted the same as you. So something short interval in the morning. You're like getting up being stiff, and if you're stiff, you want your body to open up and be at its best. And I think that when I first get up now, I have the same. I do something every day, without a doubt. One of mine is I walk every morning. I do walk my dog sort of, but now it's getting older. It's sort of I walk myself and the dog's a little bit. I like walk up and down. People just think, are you ever actually with your dog? And I'm like, I want to walk. This is for my own mind, and I've got books on. But the stretching one came recently. As with meditation, I meditate a little bit. I've got this mad story about meditation. I try and meditate, and I have friends who are obsessed by it, and they're always telling me. And it's really silly, the story here, that years ago, I'd been to this free monk place. It's like a monastery. You can go there and they do a free meditation. I was getting into going. So I did that, got me into do it. And one day I was absolutely on one with the kids, and I was like, I went out the way and got in the garage. I'm like, when you're that mad, there's like steam coming out of you. I was just so mad. And I just sat there, and I never thought start meditating. I just sat there, and a moment I just started going, and I just started it. I was 120 on one. Within 5 minutes, I was so calm. I laughed at how the transition had gone. I only ever did that once. It was probably about 6 years ago. I've never been that mad. I think I used to be madder, but it didn't. I don't know. I think I'm always told you should get in this place. I think I got in that place, and that's the only time I've ever really got there.
Well, meditation's interesting. And not speaking it obviously as any sort of meditation expert, but I find that if I just don't focus on doing it right, it's really just about breathing and relaxing. And so I think people get a little wound up about the details or requirements, or do I have to be sitting a certain way? I lay down on my bed because it's comfortable, like other people. Yeah, I personally do. Other people would say, who are maybe more serious, would say, well, you should be sitting up and be but I'm doing it to relax and feel comfortable. So I'm finding what works for me. And I think that's the best way to be for everyone, is find what works for you. And, there are guided meditations, there are different types of meditation, there's music you can listen to. There's so many different things that you can try. I would just encourage people to find what works.
See, you've just given me another one, actually. So when I was 24, I was a teacher for kids with emotional behavioural difficulties. Basically, where we live, the naughty kids from disadvantaged backgrounds, smaller sizes. And they had this thing called the Rainbow Room. And I was going through a relationship breakup at the time. So I was a bit, I'm being the teacher, but I've got my own, I'm still an adult and going through my own adult stuff. And then we have to be there and be that perfect guy as teachers have to be. So the Rainbow Room was for them. So we go in, and to be honest, it was a guided meditation. I didn't know it was a meditation. The woman said, she was brilliant. She went in, there was like sheets on the ceiling, big bean bags. It was so comfy, the room. She went, right, everyone lie down. I got comfy. She did the body check, right? We'll do a body check, feel it in your hands. He went through on the whole body. Then she'd go, right, close your eyes, imagine this. And she'd take you on a journey. One of the ones was in some woods. She went, I'm taking you to the forest now. Imagine this, imagine that as you go. Right, do you see the building? We're going into the building. I am completely gone, to the point where she took me in the building. I was in the building, and she made us open this sort of like it was like a treasure tray. She opened it and then went, just come back round now. I was like, and this happened, I went in there about 3 times, and it was the most phenomenal experience. I just so needed it in my life right then. But I've like Googled, YouTube, done it all, and tried to get the similar kind of thing. I've never really found it.
That's interesting. Maybe there was something about the way she was leading you, or something going on in your life, or the environment, or how comfortable you were, or something like that. Yeah, I've had some experiences where I've done a guided meditation and really, like you said, been lost in the imagery of it. And then other times where my mind is just scattered and I'm struggling to even focus on my breath from one breath to the other, which is like a matter of a few seconds. And I think the important point there, though, the thing I try to remind myself is every time you catch yourself and return to your breath, that is the practice. That is the point. So just because it's not one of those phenomenal, oh my gosh, I was in another universe type experiences, doesn't mean that it wasn't a success for you.
Have you had any?
I've had some where I definitely feel like I'm, in an alternate reality. Those are some of the best, where you get in that like really deep relaxation. But many more that aren't like that. They're more like what you're talking about, the body scan, or maybe I find myself constantly thinking about a grocery order or something, like, it's just that happens. That's how the mind works. It's constantly trying, there's a lot of talking going on. And so some days are better than others.
I tried this morning. I've got this new manifestation book that I bought from my partner at Christmas, and she never used it. So I thought, I'm a keeper up. If I say I'm going to do it, I'll do it. So I opened it, and it says, you want to get in a nice place? You're just going to meditate for a couple of minutes to get in this manifestation place. And Sophia was there this morning, and she had some YouTube. She, like, normally there's no TV in the morning, but because it's off for school holidays, and she was going to some club, so she had this on, and I'm trying to go and get in my zen at the table, because that's where I like to do it. And I just couldn't. All I could hear was these YouTubers constantly. You know what kids ones are like? They're constantly loud. Yeah. And I was like, I parked it, and tomorrow she won't be there in the morning, so I'm going to give it another go.
But you know what? That's still a success, because you still tried it, and you're realizing what your sort of your boundaries are. I meditate when the kids are home sometimes as well, and it's actually something that I wrote about, because I had to figure out, okay, how to communicate with them. I got to shut my door. Not only shut, I got to lock it. I have to put on the headphones. There's different things to actually be able to make it a success. But even if you get distracted or interrupted by a YouTube video or whatever it is, the fact if you can return to the breath even just for a second after that, it's still a success.
Well, I've got a success because I couldn't get away from the YouTubers today. It was just like I started and I just thought, nah. But I'll tell you, I've got another way that I've been doing it. I've got like a lot of my videos I shoot. I go to my favourite place called Fletcher Park, full of trees. It's only a small little park. I love it. And now I've started going there and doing it with my eyes open. So sitting in with awareness. So I sit down on this tree stump that's gone, And it's the most beautiful place in the whole wide world. And I'm only sat there in a nice day on the whole because it'd be cold. So I just sat there, I sit there, and I just let myself just slowly become at one with where I am and listen. And it starts with the listening. So I listen. And I listen for my first bird noise. Or squirrels. There's a lot of squirrels there. And I listen and I see it. And then my mind often will not go off. It'll just go to that moment and live in awareness. And I have that for 5 minutes. And I find
it's beautiful.
it's honestly, it's like, yeah, it's that's something that I'm doing more and more because it's when I'm on my dog walk. Sometimes now my dog's that far behind, I have to sit and wait for it. So it's either like, oh, where's the dog? Where's the dog? Or let's get in awareness. I absolutely love
Well,
it.
I think that's something that's great about finding what works for you. Like what can work into your lifestyle, where do you get the most bang for your buck or the most value? And I there's a nearby like little man-made lake that we live by, and so I'll take my dog and walk there sometimes too. And just since starting this journey, I had read about something called an awe walk. Have you heard of that?
An hour walk. No, go on.
Okay, so there's research behind I'm getting a little feedback now. But there's research behind an awe walk, which is essentially a way to sort of set your mind up. You go on a walk, but you set the intention that you're going to notice everything around you. So be very mindful of all the things that are impressive or that create this sense of awe. And the idea is that when you do that, then you not only connect with nature, which is an evidence-based way to feel better, but you get a better perspective, a better sense of your size in the world because you're looking at this large, like you said, a large tree, or I'm looking at the neighborhood like ducks that were just born and just in awe of sort of the life cycle that's going on right below my nose. And it's not like I never used to walk my dog around the lake. It was just that I was lost in my head, thinking about what I had to do today, or how many calories am I burning, or what's the dog doing, who's the dog going to bark at, all these things. And if you set a different intention, and even if it's just for a few minutes to really pay attention, it's impressive what it does for the way you feel and the gratitude that you feel for just what's going on right under your nose.
Can I just? I want to highlight two things here. One's really bad, and one's really good. So we'll start with the good because the bad's bad, but it's an illustration of life. But the thing I'm noticing is once you start making an effort to take responsibility on the way that you feel, then you automatically start to feel better because you're focusing on improving how that happens. Happiness is not a gift; it's a process. So I think that, like, since you got into it, you might more and more and more. Like, I've been obsessed about it for ages, like so long. It's my personal obsession. Like, I think when I come up against someone with knowledge, I always think, oh, I'm a bit inferior. Apart from when it comes to this place here and keeping it in tech. But yesterday was a real test because I wasn't meaningfully doing what you were saying, but I went out. My headphones stopped working. I all listened to books, so my headphones had stopped. So I am now in awareness. I'm walking away. We go by the river and I see these two women looking over the river. I think, what are they looking at? I look over. Oh, this is the maddest thing. You just brought it up. There was this swan harassing this duck, and it was proper harassing it. Next minute, I realised what's going on. So the duck keeps attacking the swan in the end. Next minute, the swan grabs hold of one of the ducklings. The little one, I didn't know that swans attacked him, and it's ducking it under the water. Honestly, it was traumatic, yeah? But then I went to this straight away, what I thought. It's the ecosystem. It's always like the women started throwing rocks at the swan trying to stop it. But can we stop the ecosystem of the world? It's like, that's the other thing when I sit and watch my garden, birds are bullies to other birds.
Yeah.
Massively. The bigger bird picks on the next one. The birds that are more than one pick on the one. But that's life. Do you know what I mean? And when you watch that, I know that's bad, but when I'm watching it, I choose not to take the bad. I choose to remember that's life, and that's what a bit like the human life's like. So when you have something goes on with someone else, it's just the way that life goes, and it's up to us what we take from it. I didn't let the swan freak me out. I accepted what it is and moved on because I stopped watching it because it was freaking me out.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about how there's a lot of value in just understanding our place in the world and keeping things in perspective. And that's part of the idea behind the awe walk is that your problems don't feel as huge when you realize how big the universe is around you. And then I think there's also something there about just common humanity and just being able to keep in mind a lot of what we experience is just the daily struggle of being a human. And that was something that I hadn't read before, but I recently, as going through this journey, I've been becoming more and more aware of the thoughts that go on in my head and the stories I tell myself. And I've realized that I have a pretty mean bully going on and, between these two ears. And I think that's for a lot of us, our harshest critic is ourselves. And so I started reading about self-compassion, and one of the components, really trying to work on that, being more compassionate towards myself. One of the components is this, what's called common humanity. And it's the idea that a lot of our experience is really just part of being a human. We feel bad or we feel angry or someone hurt us, and so part of that is, well, that happens. This is going to happen. This too shall pass, that idea. And then also the idea that maybe that other person has something else going on in their life. We have no idea the story that's going on, where they're coming from, what baggage they're bringing. And so you can think about, if you get upset about something from both of those, it's like, okay, I'm allowed to have these feelings, and this is just part of being a human, as well as thinking of the other person as a human and what is really going on for them. So
I'm with you. Like what we said it before, putting yourself in the person's shoes. So that was one part. And then, have you read the book, The Chimp Paradox?
No.
Oh, it's one of the best. It's a mind management book, and it's an implying about your chimp being something that's part. Like you said, yours is a bit of an evil critic to you. Chimp's another area that looks out for you. He's the one that defends you, looks out for you. Get in a crisis, he'll get you out of it. He's immense. Mine's a he, obviously, because I'm a he. He's the one I can rely on. If I get out there and there's a bit of thing, he knows what to do and gets me out. The problem is he's not good in all scenarios, and he causes a lot of problems if he runs the show. So it sort of highlights that. And the best bit for me was understanding when you meet someone in a supermarket, you meet their chimp, it's not them. Unless there's rarely a person who's like that all the time. And then I've learned to not take that personally, because it might, if I meet them 3 times and they've done it, then there are like that. I avoid them. I avoid them as much as I can. But everyone's not mad all the time. There are some people, nutcases in the world, but on the whole, humanity is a pretty amazing species. And everyone gets caught up in the human race at different points.
That's right. And we don't really know what's going on with someone else, or what stories are going on, or what's happening in their personal life. And so it is very helpful to take a step back and think about it from that perspective, like you're saying.
But then what happens when you're having a bad day and you come up against it? That's when it all goes a bit nuts, doesn't it?
Well, hopefully you've done some work and can take a step back and allow yourself to have those feelings, but also not get too carried away in the story for yourself. That's what I'm working on anyway.
Yeah, I had one the other day where I'm at right now. So I'm in an office downstairs, no windows. So what I do every so often is I work out of here a lot, as much as I can. So I have this little reset. I go, and it gets a bit cloudy. Reset, out we get, turn the computer off, walk out the door, and I live in such a great place. There's a lovely park, and I walk around it. 6 minutes, I'm there and back. It's nature, birds again, all the things I love, green. I advise everyone to do this. If you ever get in something, just remove yourself. Give yourself 5 minutes. I'm going around there, and I see a young lad abusing people. So he's abusing him in the street, not in the street, the back of this thing. And I sit down, I go, all right, mate, how are you doing? And he starts abusing me at first. And then I don't listen to his abuse. I start talking to him. And after a bit, it takes a while. He starts talking back in a normal way. So we've gone from abuse. Now I've leveled him a little bit. In the end, he doesn't want to listen. So I say to him, listen, all I want to do is help you. And I want to give you some information and advice. If you want it, I'm going to go and sit at that bench. And it's up to you if you come. He came. I gave it him. And it's like, if I'd have viewed his chimp, which I first saw, and his alcohol abuse, and what he was having a bit of the shakes from it, I could have viewed all that. I am a man, I'm big as well, so I don't have to feel threats of people. So that's always an advantage. But, it's that he was clearly anxious. If you're an alcoholic, you're quite anxious. He was doing that. His hand was literally doing that. He's only 25. That's anxiety, that, or a level of, it's alcohol dependence and it goes a bit further. But it's looking at other people and thinking a bit more beyond the surface of where they are.
Well, and you might be the only one who's ever talked to him that way when he was in that position.
Mm.
You brought a whole new perspective, and maybe that's what he needed in the moment, which is really nice. That's really kind of you.
He was, and you know what? I do that all the time. Like literally, because I'm blessed by I'm big. I don't have to feel threats at people. I can have a conversation, and where other people would be worried by it, because, well, I suppose as well, I'm a streetwise guy from my youth. But there's a lot of people out there who have something on the outside. It's not really them. They're actually something much more softer and centered on the inside if you give it a go.
Right. And that's what, I've learned a lot in terms of being anxious out in public. Someone might appear irritable, but maybe they're just anxious, or, you don't really know what's going on. And I had a experience where I was volunteering very early on when our COVID vaccines came available, and I was volunteering at a clinic. And I just remember not sleeping well at all the night before. It was going to be one of the first times I was really out in public around people in a long time. And I had to be there.
You felt that?
Oh, for sure. And also just having somewhere to be and having to be there really early. And it was all new, not really knowing where I was going, all this stuff. And I remember at a certain point in the morning, I talked to the team that I had been assigned to work with. And I just said, yeah, I'm just feeling a little anxious. And there was a team, I think there was 4 of us, 3 out of 4 said, me too. Thank you so much for saying that. And then we talked about how none of us slept the night before. And there's just a lot of value, I think, in saying out loud what's happening for you, so people can understand and can relate to you. And then you might be really surprised at how other people are having these same things, these same challenges going on for them as well.
When you relate to someone, it's such a blessing when you like when they did that to you, you instantly felt them. As a human being, you felt that energy, didn't you? So you felt them two people with a little bit of vulnerability thinking, yeah, I'm the, we all are the same. Just some people hide it better.
Well, and it also validates everyone so that you don't have to feel like you're struggling alone. And that's part of why I wanted to start the blog and talk about being anxious, is that we have such a stigma. I'm not sure how it is where you are, but at least in the US, there is a stigma against mental illness at all. And a lot of people don't talk about it. And we're getting better, but there still is
a massive push of people being more understanding of it and talking about it more. It's a big, I'd say mental health has never been as prominent as it is at the minute.
I would agree with that, but we still have a long way to go. And so I wanted to be someone to speak up and say, I battle with this too, and here's what I'm doing, and maybe it will work for you or help you, but at least to validate other people who are going through a similar struggle or any sort of struggle, which we all at some point in time will have.
Yeah, that is definitely. We're all going to have struggles, and when I'm working with people, it's always mad that life is actually immense until you let this bit get in the way. Everything else is cool, but if you let this bit in, and people get caught up in all that stuff that gets mentioned, there's actually you. And I think you said it before about that critic with yourself. It can say mad things that you think, did I just say that? And you didn't. It was just a playback in your mind that goes on, and it says a lot of different things within there. The mind is a very complex web out there. And if you can start
it sounds like you're very insightful about the voices in your head, and that's awesome. You found some really good ways to manage and cope. That's something that a lot of us don't even realize, is that a thought is just a thought. You don't have to be your thoughts. You can learn to release them. And particularly when I'm feeling anxious, I can remember like, oh, well, that's not real, and I can dismiss it. And so I've developed some like visualizations that I use, to just kind of clear my mind. And it takes a split second, but I can visualize sort of that thought disappearing and releasing it and realizing I don't have to buy into it.
It's like that. This is one of my famous ones. I think I read it in a book, but everyone has it. You're at the train station. You're on the train. There's a train coming. You think about falling in. Many people have had it. Or you're on a building. You think about falling off. So I started like there was a book by Sydney Banks called The Constant Gardener. Is it the Constant? Yeah, Constant. It's a Sydney Banks book. Constant Gardener. It's Introduction of Mind, Consciousness, and Thought. That thought is there, but we can control it. I have a little thing of if I start like I think what people who worriers do, they start with this little thing here, and I would stop it here. They let it go right the way to the other side, and they get to if you let that go, a whole horror story could come out. So I'll either do a noise or pull myself, and I have some friend who are worriers, and I'll be with them, and I'll see him going into it, and I'll go, "It's Lewis, my old brother-in-law." I'll go, "Lewis," and he'll go, "What are you thinking about?" And he went, "Whoa, I'm glad you pulled me out of that." And they haven't got that skill yet that your mind will take you to places that no one wants to go, so get out of it, whatever it may be. And it's normal though. That's the thing. You're not nuts. Everyone's going through it.
Yeah. Very true. And sometimes it's easier said than done. So at least I found for myself when I'm anxious, a lot of times I would, I mentioned before, was originally in my 20s taught to use cognitive behavioral techniques. So like what you're talking about, to sort of stop thought stopping. But what I've realized is it was helpful, but only to a certain point. And when you're anxious or become obsessive about something, you can't just rationalize it away. And so there are other things at that point when it doesn't work that you can do. And one of them is actually like leaning into it and actually sitting with the emotion or the fear or the feeling. And I've found that actually really helpful recently. It's not something I'd ever tried before, but there's a technique where you when you start to feel anxious, you pause and allow it. Because if you've ever been anxious before, the first thing you do is like you pump the brakes. You sort of like start white knuckling, like, oh no, I don't want this again. I don't want to be in fear. I don't want to feel like this. And you start trying to like convince yourself, oh no, you're fine, when really you're making it worse. And so something I started doing was just sitting back and saying, okay, I'm going to be anxious right now. I'm going to label it as anxiety. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to focus, like what we had talked about before, where in my body am I feeling it? It's like, oh, I'm feeling it here in my chest is tight. And I might close my eyes and bring my awareness to there and really feel it. Whereas in the past, I wouldn't want to feel it at all. Like I wouldn't want to pay attention to it. I would want to deny its existence so I didn't have to deal with it. And so sometimes we need to sit with it and learn to sit with something. And that's something I'm still really learning, how to sit with the emotions that I don't want to have.
I'm saying I read a book. So you're on about your 1st of January was to start doing everything in the morning. One of mine was I've always had rituals. I wanted to start reading every morning. So I read the book called The Greatest Secret. And that talks about being in awareness. And I spent my whole life running away from emotions, and I'm bloody good at it, I can run away from any emotion, and I can not live it for a long time, but they always catch you up.
They do.
Now, and I recommend it to anyone, is if I have an emotion, like I'm starting to, all right, it's here. I'm going to accept it in the book, and it's got me doing this. I hug it. So I'm sat there, and whatever I'm feeling like, if I'm feeling I don't really get angry anymore, but it does happen. Maybe it's jealousy, whatever the emotion that I don't like. Instead of running away, I start thinking, oh, I'm feeling that now. And I do this. He said in the book, hug it. So I hug the thought at the time, and I think, yeah, I am feeling that. And when you start to feel it, it can then fade. So I feel it now. I feel that thing, and I think, no, I'm going to feel it. Maybe rejection, or made a mistake, or whatever else I'd run away from. No, I did. I've got to accept that. And I let it fade, and I felt this is only the last few months I've been doing this. Now it's working for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm in a similar boat in that I don't know why we're not taught to do this when we're younger. I really wish we were, but trying to, I've heard other people who have had anxiety later saying, oh, I feel thankful or grateful for my anxiety. And I'm not there yet. So I'm probably not hugging my anxiety quite yet, but I am getting better at recognizing it, and I'm not welcoming it, but it, allowing it to be. And it's amazing how much quicker it goes away once you sort of acknowledge and let it be there, then you're not resisting anymore.
I've had a year ago this week, funny enough, on the 29th of July, I had the biggest news that I've ever had in my life, and it was not positive. It was the biggest test that I've ever personally had in my life. I'm gonna be documenting it soon because it's a year this week since it happened. But I've never been as like, I'm glad I've done all the mindset training I've done, because I've learned that no matter what happens around me, I can still have joy and live life and love and then feel everything. That whatever's happened doesn't have to control me. It doesn't matter how big, and this is big.
Really?
Really big, like the biggest thing that's ever happened to me. And it was like, at first what I did was I ran away from it for quite a long time, and I've only been accepting it over the last 4 months. And when I started to accept it, I started to, it wasn't holding me back, because I am very good at controlling what I think, you know, and I'm good at like my rituals and stuff. I'm good. I use nature, I exercise, I chat, I do everything that you should do, and I advise people to do. But then every so often, it comes, you know what I mean? And I'm welcoming it again now. And I think, yeah, it's like you can do it. So if anyone's watching, they think I'll never be able to do this. That's what someone said about running a 4-minute mile, or that's what someone said about flying to the moon, or that's what someone did about having amputations and getting a new, you know, all these things that have gone on. You can do anything as long as you can.
Well, what's interesting is you don't even know. So when I had that experience with my third born, people would always say, I just don't know how you do it. And it's like, well, you don't have a choice. You just do it. But a lot of times you don't get to, you're not processing it until later. So, you know, just because you're coming up on this 1 year mark, you might be still processing it, and that's okay. I think there are some things in life that we forever, you know, process, but we just get better at processing it and dealing with it.
I'm seeing your little finger and your little boy holding with his little hand when he's dead small. Like he must be doing
His hand, actually, we have a picture. His hand fit through my husband's wedding ring. I mean, he was so tiny. He was 1 pound 10 ounces, and he's 12 inches long. His diapers were like this. I gave leftover ones to a friend who had a daughter, and she said they were too small for her daughter's dolls. I mean, it was just crazy.
Oh, that is just the cutest thing in the whole world. But like everything, it moves on, and he made it, and he's all right now, and he's perfectly well and normal, because it doesn't really affect him forever. You know what I mean?
That's right. I mean, we're still doing like some speech therapy, some very minor stuff. In the grand scheme of things, we're just so happy that he's up and walking and talking and breathing on his own. And it's amazing what medicine can do.
Oh, amazing. Hey, I've absolutely loved talking to you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. So everyone, it's workingoncalm.com, and you've got a blog on there, and people can look on, and there's a PDF that people can get about dealing with anxiety.
Yes, Commit to Calm has a PDF on, if you want to be able to, the tab Commit to Calm. If you want to,
all right, good. I was thinking I got it wrong, and I was thinking I was quite chuffing myself.
You have the website correct. It's workingoncalm.com, but under the tab Commit to Calm, if you want to, you know, start on your own, just 1 day at a time, 10 minutes at a time, like a lot of what we've been saying, it's just a little bit here and there, and it really adds up to some big change.
I'll put your website. I always do the intros now at the end. Someone gave it me. Funny enough, I rented an office to a guy, and he says, "Oh, I just need somewhere to do my podcast." I went, "What, you do podcast?" He was like, "Yeah." I went, "So do I." So he came down here and he gave me advice. What best time? No, it's not at the beginning. Do your chat and find out what it's about, and then you've got the energy from what you had. So, and then it's a much more exciting intro if you do it from the end backwards. So I'll mention it all then. Awesome. I've really enjoyed it.
You too. Thank you so much, Christian.
Thanks so much. So I'll just press this little button then, and you'll remain there. Just 1 second, but thanks.
Okay, thank you.